Hi, King Dan here. This video is called The Divine Right of Kings. The context for this video is kind of important because what do we mean by the divine right of kings is actually a really important distinction. So, satanic kings claim their political power came from God. This is what people generally think about when they think about the divine right of kings. The historical kings, the satanic kings, remain largely unaccountable. Now, it doesn't matter here if they're called a pharaoh or an emperor. Doesn't matter. Either way, this individual leveraged the power of state to coerce their views on society. Okay? So the citizens were withheld inalienable civil rights. The king ended up using the power of the state over the individuals, but the king himself claimed he had this power, which was the divine right of kings from God. However, if we think about it, if Christ is the king of all kings, the king of kings, and you're his child, you're the child of God, then who are you? Then you're a king. You inherit the rights of a king because your daddy is king. So every individual contains these inalienable rights, these divine rights from God. But every individual has them, not just the historical kings, the fake kings like in England. So government must recognize these inherent civil rights. It's the government then has a very different position. The government is in the archangel position. Instead of like in the past where the government is leveraging, or the king is leveraging the power of the state to coerce itself, in a true kingdom based on Christ, government recognizes these inherent civil rights of every individual and is a servant to the people, just like in the archangel. In the Garden of Eden, the archangel was the servant. However, we understand that Satan always creates a defective version of God's plan in advance. This is, you can take this from a biblical context, or it's even spelled out several times in the divine principle. In the divine principle, it says basically that the monarchy was created to provide a foundation to receive the King of Kings. So Satan was setting up these false kingdoms. Every kingdom, every society, every satanic ruler in all of human history was not a kingdom based on the King of Kings. So God literally wanted a monarchy, and he created the monarchy as the foundation to receive the King of Kings. Why a monarchy? Because there's a king. Christ is king. All right, so divine right of kings. What are these divine rights that the kings in the past have, but in Christ's kingdom everyone will have? So I really like how Hyunjanim simplifies them into three. He says the sovereignty over your own affairs, ownership over property, and the right of self-defense. All right, so sovereignty over your own affairs, basically then it means all voluntary reciprocal actions are politically moral. I didn't say they are ethically moral, but political morality is then a smaller subset of the overall category or the overall discussion of morality. And basically, if you're sovereign over your own affairs, you don't need the government's permission to make decisions. They're your decisions. You can choose who to contract with or who not to contract with. If you end up needing the government's permission to start a business or to not start a business or to not do something, then actually the implicit source of power is the government. It's not you through Christ and ultimately God. So if you're a child of God and you have the divine rights from Christ, then you have sovereignty over the decisions you make in your life. Now, that also comes with the responsibility of taking responsibility over the actions and the results of the decisions you ended up making. But you're free to make those decisions. So the past kings, and now everyone, if in Christ's kingdom, everyone has ownership over property. I just want to give two Bible verses that indicate this. It says that the meek shall inherit the earth. I chose this one simply because it shows this lineage-based I inherit something. Why? Because the King of Kings gave it to me. The meek shall inherit the earth, which is creation. What is creation? It's just property. Now, we then in our daily life, we trade and transact this property, but still it's because we're sovereign over our own affairs and ultimately sovereign over the property that God gave us. We have dominion over creation. And then the right of self-defense. In the past, if kings felt threatened, they activated the army and started, repelled the incoming invasion. Or they often even went in the aggressive mode. So the right of self-defense is the power to kill, but also the responsibility to die. Even there's a lot of examples in history where the kings really felt this obligation to die on the front lines with his fellow soldiers. So the right of self-defense ultimately is about protecting the inheritance you received from God. It's important to distinguish the power of death, the power to kill, from the power of murder. It's very clear that murder is a violation of human life because it violates someone else's life unjustly. However, the power to kill is in only the response of your life being threatened. You have the power to kill, but you also have the responsibility to die to save your neighbor. Love God, love your neighbor. Now, so far, I'd really just talked about this particular slide on an individual context, right? Sovereignty on an individual level, ownership on an individual level, and then self-defense on an individual level. But these are principles that easily can be extracted to the national level, having national sovereignty over your own affairs. So in Christ's kingdom, there's nothing like the UN that will come in and subvert that authority that the citizens of God will actually have. So on a national level, the ownership of property is basically territory. And what is territory? It's just a collective or a bunch of individuals grouped together that have their own property, and the boundaries of that property, various states they want to have a free market with, the boundaries of the territory ultimately is the boundaries of the kingdom of heaven, at least in a political context. So as individuals, as other states make decisions to return to Christ's kingdom, to return to the authority of Christ, then by extension, Christ's kingdom will also be expanding. And then at the national level, in Christ's kingdom, it's a militia system. Christ, true Father, Lord of the Second Advent, said, peace, 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 police, peace, militia. So it's a self-defense militia system that is just individuals made up of society working together to repel invasions, both foreign and domestic, that are willing and actively seeking to violate another king's rights. So the divine right of kings, if you really would think about it, is something every individual inherits from God. That's it. Now, the implications of that, how we interact, is basically a free market. But it's really important to understand these divine rights, because government ends up trying to weasel itself and kind of subvert these directly or indirectly.